we speak to Professor Loren Landau, who's from the Wits Centre for Migration. Prof, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. So what's your reaction to the first group that has now landed in Washington, just outside Washington, D.C.?
I think this is a farce. It's a farce that shows that Donald Trump is disconnected from any kind of empirical reality. But it more fundamentally is a sort of statement sent to South Africa and a statement being sent to the United States that white privilege should be protected and that if there is any even perceived assault on it, that the United States and Donald Trump in particular will be a savior and will protect whites, particularly white Christians, wherever they might be.
And how do you think the South African government should be responding to this? And I ask this because, yes, we've seen statements where they say that this group are not refugees. They should not be qualifying for that. And of course, even taking a dim view on all of that and speaking even about what AfriForum would have said when they went to the US and the president saying in public that he's taking a dim view of this. But now you have President Trump confirming that he's meeting, the South African delegation, which will include the president next week. How should they be tackling or even approaching those kind of discussions?
Well, I think what we've seen from Donald Trump's diplomacy is that facts are not what speaks to him. You have to appease his ego. But what I would really think the South African government needs to do is step away from Donald Trump, not try to fight him in public. That's what he's after. He likes these battles. He wants to be the savior. He wants to be seen. But instead work with Congress, work with people who recognize the work that South Africa is doing, recognize the benefits of partnership, and try to promote trade, try to ensure that aid flows again to support life-saving health and HIV interventions, and try to build allies within the United States. That's not going to happen through the president, but it can still happen. And I think that's where the diplomacy needs to concentrate.
Now, US President Donald Trump, Prof, this afternoon, right, reiterating that there is a white genocide, according to him, in South Africa. And of course, the president has said that this is still not the case. And when you are looking at this, he continues to even say that he's protecting white Afrikaners from being killed in the country and, and all of that. One wonders, though, that will they have, in your view, a better life that they say they're wishing for in the US?
It's very difficult to know. Life in the US is tough. They will have to work hard. Typically, the refugee resettlement programs offer very little assistance, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of kind of subsidized housing, and then they kind of push you into the job market. I don't know who these specific individuals are. I'm not sure where they're being taken, and I'm not sure what sort of rights they're going to have. I think one of the questions remains whether South Africa would allow them to come back, should they choose to, in which case they really venture very little. They can go. If they don't like it, they come back at any time. Obviously, if they make it, there are opportunities in the United States they may not have in South Africa. But I think many of them will find that life there is much harder than they expect.
And what about the reality that things may possibly change? And I want to latch on to something you just said, particularly if the administration does change in the next couple of years, that maybe another president who comes in may not necessarily understand what is going on here and want to scrap this program.
Well, in the United States, typically, up until Donald Trump came into office, once you were given refugee status or immigration status, that would be allowed you to stay. And refugee status typically puts you on a pathway to citizenship. These numbers are very small. I don't think unless South Africa demands that these people be returned, which I can't see happening, they would be allowed to stay and they would just sort of disappear. But yes, I think the damage will be long-term. South Africa, if anything, has learned that the United States is not a reliable ally, will not stand by South Africa, and is actually out to embarrass it. And that will, I think, damage both countries' relationship for years to come.
So does it mean then, especially because the question still remains, can we see the US president come the G20 summit later this year? What do you see happen given now these developments that continue to take place?
Well, he has said today that he's not planning to come. I don't know if he will send someone else of a high level, a J.D. Vance or someone else. But clearly, he wants to send a message. He's trying to stigmatize South Africa. He's trying to stigmatize transformation programs. in South Africa as he has done in the United States. What that means for international diplomacy is unclear. It's unclear wherever the G20 was, whether Donald Trump would be a reliable participant. He wants to be the center of attention. He doesn't believe in multilateralism. So maybe his absence would allow the rest of the world to actually form stronger relationships, and that might end up being good for South Africa.
Do you think that the other countries might catch on, as you say that he's trying to stigmatize South Africa? Can this work in trying to get other countries to buy in?
Well, I think other countries will recognize what he's doing, as South Africans have, as most Americans have, in fact. I think most Americans, if anything, they think of South Africa as a place of reconciliation and peace with its issues. And I think what he's doing is ultimately alienating himself from a lot of Americans, certainly from most South Africans. And I think he's sending a message to the rest of the world, which will hurt the US's moral authority and ability to actually negotiate for what it wants in other countries as well.
Prof, just before I let you go, right, tonight we just spoke to our correspondent who tells us that they could be heading to, for example, Minnesota, Alabama, Idaho, as well as Texas. Let's talk about these areas and what you know about them.
Well, they're very different, but all of them are primarily agricultural areas. And they are areas where a lot of white Americans and others have left because the economic opportunities there are not strong. So perhaps this is a program, an effort to try to bring their farming skills. Again, I don't know who these people specifically are, bring their energy into towns that have a dwindling population. But life in those areas will be hard. If they're after a fast life, high opportunities, a diverse economy, these are often not the places to go. But let's see. If they do end up in Minnesota, I can assure them that they will be very, very cold.
Prof, appreciate your time as always. And let's see then what happens with these developments, and hope we'll speak again soon because, you know, as the South African government will then meet the US government, one is keen to see what are some of your thoughts with regards to some of what we'll hear was discussed there. But appreciate your time this evening.